Ready to learn how to make your Hoya happy and flower even? It smells so good too. And the nectar? And it's a perfect little dome. It's time to share all my Hoya care tips. This video is going to have a lot of information, so I've put timestamps below so you can skip to the parts that you want to revisit or that you have specific questions about. To start with the basics, Hoya is a genus of mostly succulent-leaved plants that mostly live epiphytically, meaning they grow onto trees, and they originate from subtropical Asia, Polynesia, as well as Australia. They make for good houseplants because they're quite easy to care for, at least in my climate. I have heard from people that are more in tropical places that they can be a little bit more tricky. In my experience, they are really fun to grow. Also because when they get big, like this one, they are still pretty manageable, especially compared to the aroids that I have in my house. And they were pretty popular in the 70s as well, so it's always worth checking your grandparents' houses or your parents' houses to see if there's any heirloom plants. Their common name in many languages is something similar to wax plant, which I think has to do with the nectar that is on the flowers. And I've also heard that the common name can also be porcelain flower in some other languages, which makes sense because the flowers are so beautiful. They look like they've been made of porcelain. There are a few common species that you can find in basically every garden center or plant shop, but there's many more species with all sorts of cool looking leaves, patterns, and colors and amazing flowers. Some flowers can get so big as well. And I will be showing you several of my favorites throughout this video. Some people grow them for the leaves, like me. Other people grow them mainly for the flowers. There's people who want to collect them all, like there's amazing Swedish collectors that have so many species. There's a lot of amazing, passionate Hoya people out there, and I will be linking some of their channels down below as well. For example, Doug Chamberlain, he's put out a lot of flower videos and care videos that has been very helpful. There are a lot of benefits. A main one is that they can take a little bit more light than most of our aroids. They are easy to care for. They stay pretty small even when they are mature plants. And also you can grow many of them hanging, so they don't take up any windowsill space. You can actually make a whole curtain of Hoya. So maybe there is a spot in your house for some Hoya. This video is not sponsored by any Hoya sellers, I promise. Now I have a lot to say about them, so let's get into it. When you buy a Hoya in the garden center, I've set it up this way so that it makes sense. It's always good to check for pests first and isolate new plants, but that is a general topic. When you get your Hoya, check the soil, because if it comes from a garden center, for example, the soil might not be great. It might be good for the greenhouses where they are grown, but in our house, the conditions are very different. So I like to triple check the soil, maybe repot right away or keep a close eye on them. If you're getting Hoya from specialist growers from web shops like Hoya Greenhouse or Hoya Fixation or some of the other amazing Hoya shops that I will link in the description, then it's easier to trust that the soil is good. But still, I know my friend Syarda from Hoya Greenhouse, her mixture dries out really fast, and I am pretty lazy with watering, so I had to learn to keep a better eye on her plants. And the same with the mixture from Hoya Fixation, Oxana. I actually had to water those little Hoya, especially because they were in small pots. The soil dried out quite quickly as well because of the small pots, so I had to water more often, twice a week. From a garden center, usually it looks too moisture holding. You can change it or just keep a close eye on it. And then the second thing is, where are you going to put it? And Hoya like a lot of light, especially ones with thicker leaves, like this beautiful outer variegated Hoya obovata. They are succulent leaves, so they can take a lot of light. Now there are also Hoya with much thinner leaves, like this one. This is a multiflora wonderfill, but they can still take quite a bit of sun, and they will show you if it's too much. So I always try to give more, and then if it's too much, bring it down a little bit, but lots of light will help them grow faster and flower quicker. Regarding the temperature for their spot, in my experience, they can handle quite a big range of temperatures. Actually, on the website of Doug from Vermont Hoya, there is an overview of the different climates, and there are a few winter blooming ones that prefer it a little bit less bright and cooler. So I like to grow them in the north-facing windows of my house. For example, Polynura, Hoya Bella, and Linearis. All of them like a little bit less heat and also a bit more regular watering. But in general, if you're in a climate like mine, pretty mild, then all the temperatures in our house should be good. If you're, like I said earlier, if you're in Indonesia, for example, then the humidity and the heat might make it a little bit more tricky to grow them. So now you know what to check for, where to put it. Let's look a little bit closer at the soil. If you are changing the soil, and also people have asked me a lot, is there a difference if you're growing it in soil or semi-hydro mix or hydroponically, or there's so many methods. Hydroponically means without any soil, so only in water. And semi-hydro or passive hydroponics uses an inorganic substrate and a water reservoir. The medium can be leca or pond or the semi-hydro mix I use, but anything that is inorganic, so also perlite or pumice or whatever you have that doesn't decay. And in my experience, it really depends on you, first of all, what you like and how often you water, what medium you prefer. But also, I did a test many years ago with Hoya Matilda cuttings, one in perlite, one in semi-hydro, one in soil. I don't even remember which ones I did. I did 4 different ones. All of them rooted and grew basically at the same speed. So I would say it doesn't matter that much. Unless it's like a really tricky one, maybe there's a few that are really tricky to root. And then you can use things like Fluval, the fancier things, to have them root a little bit quicker so that they don't die before they root. But my main way of growing them is either in a chunky soil mix, which is good for the air circulation in the roots, or semi-hydro, which also has that air circulation because those bits never decompose. So it's really up to what you prefer. The ones that I have that are still in the soil mix from the shops, they grow great, and I'm a little bit scared to repot them because I don't have that mix, so it's gonna have to change to a mix that I create. They do dry out more quickly, so I've learned to take better care of them, but they do grow really well in it. Look at this. This guy had, I think, 6 leaves when I got it, and I have a few cuttings as well now. If you want a little bit less care, less time, then I would pick semi-hydro. This looks really disgusting, but that's what my house does. It's okay. But semi-hydro, you can put a little reservoir. It takes less effort to take care of semi-hydro. Then watering. In general, Hoya like to dry out a little bit. They are epiphytes, so they don't want to be suffocated by water. It does depend, like I said before, on which medium you're using, what spot it is in, what the temperature is, and the pot size as well. Like I said, the smaller pots dry out quicker, especially in summer here in my house. I generally check once a week for all my plants for watering. In summer, I do check twice a week for the little Hoya pots because they get thirsty very quickly. I've mentioned this a little bit already, but the winter bloomer plants like to stay a little bit more moist than the more succulent-y ones. The thicker the leaf, the more light it wants, just like with succulents. And especially if your plant, we're bringing it back, has flower buds, then you don't want to let it dry out too much because that can drop the buds. We call it bud blast. And I will be talking about this a little bit more later. But in general, if there are buds, then it's good to keep an extra eye on the care. If they are in semi-hydro, I like to have a little reservoir. I actually grow them in a no-hole pots quite often as well, especially if they're cuttings. So here we have some new leaves on the cuttings. So adorable. This, I like to put a little layer of water in a little reservoir and then pour it out a few days after. So I don't have a reservoir sitting in here all day. I think you could leave it for the plant to be absorbed. I don't know exactly why, but I feel like if I keep them in water all the time, if the reservoir is high, then it would rot the roots. So I pour it out and then hold all the little bits and they will fall out, but it's okay. That works for me. Someone also asked if I use tap water or demi water or rainwater and if it matters. And if I check the pH, I use rainwater when I have it, which I have quite a lot of liters of rain barrels in the garden, so I'm lucky with that. I have never tested for pH before, but I am starting to now because I have been starting to use a little bit more specialist fertilizers like the Ellen brand, NurtureSystem. And so I just bought some of the tester thingies, but I am by no means an expert in this at all. So if someone in the comments wants to write more about the pH levels, please do, but I'm just figuring it out. In general, I use rainwater with fertilizer and that works well for me. If you have rainwater, it would be great. If you have demi-water, I don't know, it might be good. I think using tap water shouldn't be a problem either, but I have never done that, so I don't have advice about it. One more thing that can help your plant flower more quickly is fertilizer. And I alternate between two different ones currently. That's just what I have in my house. This is the Nurture Grow by Ellen, and then this is the Hesi Houseplant Elixir. And I use some other bits of both of these brands as well, like a silica one and a CalMag thing and a Roots Rescue thing, and just different things that I need in the moment. I generally give the same fertilizer to all of my plants throughout the house, so I don't separate the Hoya from the aroids or the begonia. I do sometimes with the Ellen one, there's a different measurement for semi-hydro, so I sometimes separate those out. But in general, my house just gets whatever I feel like that week. And in spring and summer, that is every week or every other week. In fall and winter, I fertilize it a little bit less, maybe every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on how the plants are doing. If they're still very actively growing, then I will continue fertilizing more regularly. But if they go dormant, then yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned that somewhere else, but Hoya can go dormant for months and they will just not grow, which is really frustrating. And I think that's why they're known as slow growers. If they are growing, then they are not slow, but they can like take huge breaks, which is really frustrating. And if you want your plant to flower, you can use these general houseplant fertilizers, but they are more for leaf growth. If you want flowers, you can switch it up to a blooming fertilizer. Hesi has that specifically, or you can find a orchid fertilizer because they are specifically for getting nice flowers. Someone also said you can use tomato fertilizer, but that is focused on fruiting. And we don't want our Hoya to fruit, we want the flowers. So I think an orchid one or a blooming fertilizer would be good. Another important thing for Hoya is support. Many of them do really well on a trellis. This is a bamboo circly one, but it can be anything you want. It gives them support like they would in the jungle when they're climbing up trees. They don't need whole moss poles, just something so that their tendrils can grab on. I like to use little plant Velcro bits, or you can use little hair clips. Lots of Hoya people use these very cute little see-through animal hair clips that make it look extra cute. But I've also used just the regular black hair clips or whatever color you want from the shops. And in this one you see, I just stuck a little stake in there just for the new branches to have some support. Because why do they need support? In the jungle, they grow a tendril first that goes looking for a good place to grow leaves. Once it finds the right fertilizer, light, and support, like this, where it's attached and feels steady, but not suffocated, so don't make it too tight, then it starts to grow out all the nice leaves. So the tendrils, I don't know, I'm going all over the place with this, but the tendrils look really bare. I've actually had many people ask me, should I cut them off? My Hoya is growing weird. No, this is how they grow. So they grow tendrils, and then if you look up close, I wonder if it's gonna show. On the nodes, like here, there's tiny little baby starters of leaves that can become active. This is actually the perfect plant to show you. That can become activated. Like here, you see a little baby one, and then it expands and expands and expands until it becomes a nice mature leaf. And when they are expanding, they're kind of like anthurium leaves. They're still very soft, so be very careful with them. You can break them very easily. This one is still pretty soft. And then they harden off, and once they're hardened off, they can take a lot more touching and moving and stuff. They're a lot more stable. So that's why a support is really important. Here's a few more examples for you for this Hoya AH049. I just put a piece of metal wire in it to help it keep the plant upright because they always fall over. It's very frustrating. But look at those nice big leaves that are growing now. You can also use these very cute metal. They're a little bit more pretty. They're from one of the shops. This one specifically is from Hoya Fixation. And this is called a trellis. This is called a tendril. I always mix them up, so I hope I do okay in this video. And then Hoya shops often also have these see-through plasticky tendrils like you see here. And especially with plants with smaller leaves like this Hoya Matilda, the round ones are very, very cute. So here you can see it is attached with little clippies that are like flowers or like dragonflies. And this one is also from a Hoya settler. This is from Hoya Zeek, Yukang. But in general, this is Hoya AH 74. I just start with sticking a stake in there so that it has, the first tendril has a way to grow up and grow up some more. And then I make the stake a little bit longer. Once the plant gets really tall, then I like to loop them around on the round ones or the bamboo stakes or whatever else you can use to create a little loop so that it doesn't continue growing upwards forever. But you have to make sure that the top part of the tendril is facing upwards. If you are looping it around and it is facing down, it will die off and start growing from another spot where it can grow up. I actually just saw a reel on Instagram of someone using this to try and get multiple branches. So they would fold the main branch down and then get a second branch. I don't know if that would work because a plant doesn't always have energy to sustain multiple branches, but I thought it was an interesting, different view than what I have. Also, if the clip is too tight, then it will die off from there and start growing from a node underneath. So the way you trellis is pretty important. And as long as the top part of the tendril is growing up or pointing up, then it will continue growing. So I would loop this around all the way until this part is up again. Does that make sense? Then how do they grow? They can be pretty slow because they can be quite like a succulent. And like I said already, they can go dormant, which is annoying. And it can make them seem like they're dead, but they're not. They're just existing, not dying, not growing. But yeah, that's really frustrating. And you can give them a kick with like extra strong fertilizer maybe to get them out, give them more light, but sometimes they just go dormant and you have to wait. If we're starting at the start here, if you take a cutting of your Hoya, let's use this one as an example because it's nice and clear. If I were to cut this, which I actually wouldn't do right now because it is growing a new leaf. And if you take a cutting, this leaf will yellow and die off, most likely. So if you do have to cut it at this point, I would always suggest taking a cutting with at least one node with a healthy hardened off leaf. So don't cut it here, tendril, baby leaf, healthy leaves. So we would cut it here. And why right above the leaf? Because it's falling over a little bit because it's in semi-hydro and not very stable. Hoya can root all over the stem. So we want as much of a stem as we can to root this cutting. So I would cut it here and then here again. And how I like to do it is make a pot full of the medium that you picked, then use a pen or a stick or something to make a hole in it. Dip your cutting first in water and then in rooting hormone and then stick it into the holes. And you can put quite a few cuttings together so you get a nice full plant and not this one bare stem like this one, for example. But you don't have to, it's up to you. If needed, you can use a little stick like this to put on top of the stem to keep the cutting a little bit more balanced, especially if it's a little bit short. What you also can do is loop the stem along the soil and then pin it down with these little pins. That way it can root from all over the stem and also start to grow from different nodes. Now, in my experience, I haven't had as much success with this method as I've had with sticking it deep into the soil, but it also can depend on the style of cutting that you have. This one, for example, did only have one piece of stem in the middle and then leaves on either side, and it wasn't happy already. The plant was dying and this was my last ditch effort to save it, so that may have something to do with why it's not working very well. But in general, I have propagated a lot of Hoya. If you don't know, I was a volunteer Hoya expert at the botanical garden here. I helped them basically restart their whole collection. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. The sticking in the soil with rooting hormone. Then you water the cutting right away and you wait. Now it can help to put it in a higher humidity environment. In the botanical gardens, we used to put them in plastic bags to help them keep the humidity high. And one thing else that's good to know, if you are taking cuttings, then you wouldn't want to take a cutting here with all these leaves, because if the plant has to support all of these leaves while trying to grow new roots, it will likely not make it. So either cut off all the leaves or just take 1 or 2 node cuttings. That will have a much better success. Then it's good to give them a nice amount of light. If you are putting it in a plastic bag, be careful, you don't want to create a hothouse and boil the cuttings. So then not right in direct sunlight. And if it's a little bit of a colder period or your house is a little bit colder, you can use a heat mat underneath as well to help motivate roots to grow. So how Hoya grow is they have 2 leaves per node, as you can see here, 1 on each side. And in the eyes, or like the armpits of those leaves, is where a new leaf can grow. And I picked this one to show you because here I had a tendril in the back, but instead this Hoya decided to grow from this eye. So we have a leaf here. It's very pretty. This is Hoya Argentea princess. Here we have the leaf petiole. Here is the stem. In between is where the node got activated and actually grew 2 more leaves. This plant is reverting a little bit, so that's a little bit sad, but okay, that can happen. And when you see a stem, you can see actually the baby leaves on this one very nicely. They will grow out into big leaves if the plant is happy. Now, if it's not happy, they can dry off and die off, or you can knock them off sometimes. So be careful when you're handling tendrils. Here you can see a few of the leaves died off. I think these were on it first, and then they died off. But where you would look on a Hoya cutting for new growth would be in this little armpit right here. A little nub would start first, and then that slowly grows into, let's see if I have an example. It turns into this little humanoid figure, in my eyes at least, on top of my nail here. Can you see? It grows out a little thingamy with 2 side shoots, and that will grow the leaves. It can also just grow a tendril first, so it doesn't always have to grow the 2 leaves first. The leaves will expand. Sometimes, especially with bigger leafed plants, it is very normal that one of the 2 leaves dies off and the other one expands to full size. Wait, especially with a big leafed Hoya like this one, for example. This is 2 different cuttings. This one does have 2, so I guess I'm just an exceptional Hoya grower. No, I just got lucky. But usually one of these leaves will die off and the other one will stay happy. And usually after the first leaves, then it will grow the tendril, like I was saying. Sometimes also it keeps growing really compactly first, and then it will start to grow a tendril, but it will at some point grow a tendril and become more climby, viney. The whole table is filled with Hoya. I said this already, but when you get a tendril, like this one is super, super long, do not cut it. This will be your Hoya. So you can see actually it's starting to grow a little leaf for me here. Very nice. This is Hoya Affinity Lumbii Splash that had a lot of struggles for me, but it's finally growing. And this one was actually looping around my Hoya shelves. So that's why it doesn't have a longer support. It was happy on the shelves, but I wanted to pull it out for you to show you. So then it is important to give this tendril support in the form of some kind of stake or whatever you can find, or your shelves like mine. Attach it, but not too tightly. As you can see, this is a very loose little piece of Velcro. You can also use the nice clips that I already mentioned. And if you are looping it around, have the end part facing upwards. That helps the Hoya to grow. And then with enough patience and enough light and good care, the baby leaves will start to come out and become hopefully really pretty Hoya leaves like this one. Now it's finally time to talk about Hoya flowers. They are so beautiful. They come in many different colors, also many different shapes and sizes. I've had a few that were quite small and maybe a little bit disappointing, but then sometimes they do smell amazing. And there's also some that become much bigger than this one, but I don't grow many of those species, or at least I don't have them in a mature form, because they sometimes need to be quite a bush before they get those almost as big as your hand flowers. It's crazy. Worth looking up though if you have the space and patience. So they're really beautiful. They also have a really nice smell. I actually like the smell of the Hoya Matilda flowers, but my boyfriend and other people in the comments as well think that it smells like pee. I don't think it smells like pee, or I wouldn't be standing here and sniffing it happily. There's many different scents that Hoya can have, from butterscotch and caramel to lemon. There's amazing smells and also some that are not so nice. I really like this one. My favorite smelling one is Hoya lacunosa or croniana. It's a really fresh smell, and also it's a very easy one to grow for flowers. So my main tip is lots of light, lots of patience, and regular fertilizer. That's usually what I say. Now, I've had a lot of people in the comments being like, my plant has been growing for 6 years but hasn't flowered yet, and that's really frustrating and also really common. Mainly because the plant does need to be mature before it can flower, which can take several years. But I got this one in October and it is now June. So not even a year. And I got it as a small cutting like this. So it just grew very fast, which I think is to do with how much light I've given it. It was under my grow light right there. Lots of light means fast growth. It's kind of interesting to know how to recognize how Hoyas are going to flower. And there is a step that will tell you that it's about to do so or try for the first time. This is a Hoya carnosa Wilbur Graves tie. Really nice silvery leaves. So first, what a plant does is it grows a tendril with a little weird side thing. This is called a peduncle, and it is the first sign that your plant is ready to start blooming. But not really. So they often grow a little peduncle like this first that doesn't do anything. It doesn't grow buds, which is the next step normally. It just sits there. And in my explanation of this is that it is testing out the waters. So it's growing one peduncle, and then usually it grows another peduncle at some point, and that one does start to grow buds. I don't know why, but often for me, the first ones just never do anything, except for my Hoya Matilda, which was a very fast one. When it is ready, it will start to grow buds at the end here, which is hard to show you because they're so small. So I have one that's a little bit bigger. If you are wondering, I have about 60 Hoya species right now. And at the end, I will answer a few more personal questions about my favorites and my collection. But I love showing them all to you again. They are doing so good. In here, you can see little buds. See them? So that's what will happen. They will start to bud up. And very often, this first budding up, you are so excited. You've waited for a peduncle. You got one peduncle, didn't do anything. Second one, finally budding up. Then bud blast. They will fall off, all of them. And you're like, what did I do wrong? Nothing. It is, in my experience, again, the plant testing out the environment. Is it safe for me to flower here? Is it a good condition? And if it is, then it will try again, and then the flowers might actually open. Bud blast can also happen from pests or getting too dry, especially the winter bloomer ones. They don't want to get too dry. I've also seen pests, especially mealybugs and thrips on the flowers, just having a feast on everything around it, so that doesn't help them open. If they finally continue to get thicker and thicker and you're like, they're almost gonna open, I highly recommend maybe getting an old phone to put up for a time lapse, because it is so satisfying to see. I recently made this time lapse of my Hoya Matilda flowers open, and it got over 1 million views on Facebook, so thank you, Facebook viewers. It is so fun to see. Now, I currently only have the Hoya Matilda flowers open to show you, and these are a really, really nice one. They are the perfect little stars. They're usually 5-shaped stars, but you can sometimes get a 4 one, which is extra special. And very often on many plants, they open first, and that's my favorite moment. They are so pretty, little perfect stars. And then it's called reflex. The leaves fold backwards, and actually they look a little bit less pretty then, in my opinion. The Matilda doesn't do that, so this one just stays like a little perfect star. But I always try to take pictures when they haven't reflexed yet on other Hoya, because that's the moment where I'm like, oh, I love you so much. There are many Hoya accounts that you can find on social media where you can see time lapses of flowers opening, or just people sharing all their beautiful flowers that they have. And it definitely helps to know what the flowers look like if you're interested in growing them for flowers as well as the leaves. For me, in general, I love the leaves more and the flowers are a bonus, but flowers like this one and Hoya obovata are a lot more beautiful than, for example, Callistophila or Meredithy. They're a little bit smaller, understated flowers. I've already talked about the smell, but another very cool thing about Hoya flowers, and which is why they're called wax plants in many languages as a common name, is that the flowers grow a nectar on each of the little flowers that can drip down and that you can actually, yeah, there's a few bits on there that you can taste. It's really sweet. It tastes like more watery honey. A few things about nectar. First of all, if you are tasting, make sure that it is a freshly opened plant or a happy looking flower. Because sometimes when they're older, the nectar goes really funky. It's not good. And then also, if there are pests on there, be careful. You don't want to taste pests rather than nectar. And then there's a few Hoya, I think especially this one, but a few species that grow flowers that get so much nectar, and especially some of them have red nectar that drips down, that one of my online Hoya friends cuts all the flowers off. And I get so upset by it, but it drips so much on all her furniture and I get it. But yeah, they can be horrible. And then some other ones don't grow a lot of nectar at all. This one has grown a little bit. It's nice and tasty, but not really dripping down as much unless I move the plant. So interesting to try out for sure if you're brave enough, but also be mindful of how you do. One more thing I love about different Hoya flowers is some of them grow like this. This is like a perfect half globe. I don't know if I can properly show you, but do you see what I mean? It's like half a globe. And then other ones grow the little, I think it's called pedicels, but the little branches on top of the flowers in different ways so that the flower is basically flat, like on a Hoya linearis. All the flowers are aligned together. And then other ones, again, grow in a perfect full globy shape. So like the whole round thing. And it's so fascinating to me how they're all so different and beautiful. Actually, there are a few species that you can grow for easy flowers, such as Hoya David Cummingi. It is a very easy flowering plant, very easy to grow plant, and easy to get as well, not expensive. And the flowers smell like butterscotch or caramel. It's a really interesting, nice, sweet smell. Hoya lacunosa or croniana are known to be easy flowerers as well. Hoya matilda is a great one to grow for flowers. My old big Hoya matilda regular plant, the not variegated one, at some point had 28 flowers at the same time. Of course, the common carnosas are easy to grow and can get beautiful flowers as well. Hoya linearis is a beautiful plant to grow for flowers. Hoya bella are also quite easy to grow and to flower. And actually, that reminds me of something else I wanted to include. Someone asked, do you cut the flower off after it's done? No, don't do that. Because most of the peduncles can flower again and again and again. This is 1 month later since filming the main video. And you can see here that the Hoya matilda peduncle is budding up again. So we might get more flowers. Yay! Hoya are known to be heirloom plants. So you might find one, my mom has one, or in your grandparents' house as well. And you can see peduncles that are like 10 centimeters long, 4 inches I think that is, because it's flowered over and over and over. So never cut the peduncle off. On some species, like this one, and Hoya bella as well, they grow their peduncles on the node as well, like everyone, but each node can have one. And these will, if they flower, only flower once and then die off. So it's hard to show you, but it's right there, a little blob. That's a different way of growing, but they will drop them off themselves. So you don't have to never cut the peduncles off, and you will see. Oh, I love this one so much. And I often actually get the question, or I used to, is this new growth or is this a peduncle? Like for example here, can you see the little point? Would you say that's a peduncle or a new growth? I'll give you 3 seconds to answer. It is actually new growth, because this is the end of the tendril. And if we look here, there is a peduncle there as well. See a little, looks basically the same at first, but it's the spot where it's in. The peduncle grows kind of in a different direction than the leaves. Maybe this is too hard to explain in a simple video, but this is new growth. It will grow 2 more leaves, and then maybe make a side shoot as well for a peduncle for flowers. I don't really know if I am explaining that very well. I learned a lot online. For Hoya, I actually went into a huge deep dive. I read 90s grower newsletters about Hoya and how to grow them. I did a full scientific dive. I loved it. I was so into them. Someone asked if I know anything about Hoya pollination, and I personally haven't done it. I have had one plant grow seeds, which is very interesting. But in general, I don't know how you would do that yourself, how to pollinate them. There are other amazing Hoya people on here. Maybe Miro knows, or Adam. Check out their channels. I will link them as well. Oh, there's a little peduncle here. Look, see the little baby point in there? That's gonna make flowers, maybe, if I take good care of this. So I don't know myself. I do know that the seed pods are these really long, like this big, on quite a small plant. So they're quite big. And then fluff comes out like a dandelion with tiny little seeds on it. I have tried to grow those seeds out. It is not easy. I know some of my friends have done it, but in general, Hoya are much easier to grow from a cutting than from a seed. And for a cutting, you always need a node. So you can't just do a leaf like a begonia. You need a piece of stem and a node where one of the leaves is. One more thing to include, someone asked me, do Hoya get a setback after they flower? In general, I would say no, not like with aroids, for example, but you do see that it slows down the growth of the leaves while it is in bloom a little bit. So not a setback, but just a little bit of a slowdown. And someone asked how to get more frequent flowers. And I guess regular care, stable conditions will help with that, and regular fertilizer. We often forget that in nature, these plants get everything that they want from where they live. But here they live in a tiny pot inside a house. So there is no nutrients, and that's what we have to add manually. So that's why I fertilize every week, generally, if I have time. If I'm too busy, I'll do 1 week with just rainwater, and then next week I'll do fertilizer again. Then let's talk about issues that you can have with your Hoya. And one of the big issues is pests. Generally, mealybugs love Hoya. Now I'm lucky to say I don't have an example for you right now, which is pretty amazing, but probably after filming this, I will find mealybugs somewhere again. I just found some mealybugs on these new leaves of my Hoya obovata. Oh, look at how many. And one of the new leaves fell off, and you can see at the base that it's dead. I think they cut it off. There's some white fluff there. So mealybugs suck. Kill them if you can. They can be really tricky because they can hide, especially in the more curly leaved Hoya. They can hide all over. I actually had to throw away my linearis, which at some point was as long as me, because it was just being demolished by mealybugs. So mealybugs mainly, and you can recognize them often by the stickiness on the leaves. Then I've also had quite a few aphids on them, which apparently you don't see very often in houses, but they definitely love, especially the new leaves and the new tendrils at the ends of the tendrils, because that's where the new growth is and it's nice and tasty. It's struggling to focus, but there's aphids at the end of this tendril here that I'm now going to squish professionally, and they are dead. And of course on the flowers as well. And then I've also had thrips on my Hoya, which was interesting because I thought they would pick all the monstera and philodendron that I have around, but no, they also picked the Hoya, and that damage, it looks a little bit different than on aroids. So keep an eye on your plants. They can always, of course, get spidermites as well. Thrips and spidermites, not as common as mealybugs and maybe, I don't know, aphids. Have you guys have aphids on your Hoya before? Let me know in the comments, because maybe I'm alone on that one. One bug that you cannot see with the naked eye that loves to ruin your Hoya and has for me for years is flatmites or broadmites. They are basically like little spider mites but smaller, and they eat the new growth. And you can only see them with a microscope. It's really hard to spot them if you don't know what to look for. The main thing that will give them away is growth like this beautiful Hoya Ruthier, which I don't know if it will show, but there's like new growth, and then no new leaves come out. It becomes a little plonk. They try to grow, and then the really tiny, stupid little mites eat away at the new growth, meaning there's no new leaf, but the plant still wants to grow a new tendril. So it keeps trying and it just becomes this blobby little mess. It is really frustrating if you have these, so definitely don't ignore like I did for a while. For this video, because it's gonna be quite long already, I'm not including all the treatments to all the different pests. I have separate videos about them on my channel already, or other people will have them. But flatmites and broadmites especially are really hard because you cannot see the little fuckers. And then you can also have scale on your Hoya. I am especially lucky because I got a tropical scale that you will not get in your household that has been demolishing my Hoyas. Kind of same as the flatmites, because their babies were so small that I didn't know until I got a microscope and saw that they were just eating the new growth all the time. But in general, you will not probably have that in your house. So the bigger scale are easier to treat because you can spot them sooner. Although it's kind of hard with Hoya because the stem often is the same color as the scale. So keep a close eye on them and then you'll be fine. AI actually apparently says that you shouldn't move your Hoya around too much, which in my experience is bullshit. I am never really careful with moving them and holding them and showing them to the camera for my work, showing to you guys. So I don't know where AI got that from, but don't believe it. And one thing that I learned from Theo, who is the carer for the Hoya at the botanical gardens. He's been taking care of their greenhouse for, I think, 30 years by now. So he's taught me that Hoya plants in nature, they kind of crawl, right? Let me hold one up so you can see. So it grows in a certain spot, and then because it's in nature, it will grab onto things everywhere, grow new roots at the new parts of the plant. So it's rooted all over, and then at some point the old roots will just die off because the plant doesn't need them anymore. And if you have a plant in a pot, that is an issue because we don't have roots all up in here. We just have the old roots down here, which is why if you have a big plant, you can just suddenly, it's a beautiful big plant, and then suddenly it's not doing well anymore. I've had this with a lot of my old ones where you have to restart them because all the old roots are gone. And he calls this in Dutch van de wortel afgaan, meaning the plant is going off the roots, basically translated. Sorry, Theo. That was actually my main job, taking care of the Hoya greenhouse with him, to grab the plants that had these issues. You can see it usually when the leaves are no longer strong. They can become a little bit more soft or they start to look yellow. Then we take the plant and we restart it. Basically, I've done this at my house as well. It's really frustrating because when you have a huge big plant and there's no roots at the bottom anymore, you can't just cut it here and start to regrow it here because this is way too many leaves for the plant to take care of with trying to grow new roots. So restarting usually means taking cuttings and putting several in a pot together. At the Hortus, I would do 3 pots of the same because they were so big, and then seeing which ones take and restarting the plant that way. And according to Theo, this usually happens every 2 years or so. So he tried to repot and check the collection every 2 years and restart the plants that needed it. So if I do it step by step, you check the roots. If you see that they're dead, it's kind of easy to see because the roots are white and a little bit, they're very thin compared to aroids. If they're dead, you'll see that because they're more thin, they're more brown and more flexible as well. And then I became very, very ruthless with it because you learn to see that when they're dead, you just basically rip everything off. And usually that old cutting wouldn't grow anymore because the stem was really woodified. I don't know if that's actually a word, but really thick and old. So then the newer cuttings, actually the freshest cuttings, have the best chance of rooting if they have a hardened off leaf. So check the roots, remove the dead ones. If needed, take all the cuttings. So that's something to keep in mind. It's really frustrating and I didn't know it at first. I actually had both of these plants. This is Hoya Michaelis Splash, really nice one with markings from the scale that I used to have. And my little Ollie Obovata, just a regular one. They were both huge plants and both of them just went off the roots and I had to restart them. This was the only cutting that made it of all my Hoya Michaelis splash cuttings, plus I think one that I gave to someone else. And same with the obovata. None of them did anything except this one. So that's really frustrating, but hopefully this helps to warn you that if your plant has been doing well for a long time and it's big, check it for roots. And maybe also do more than one cutting so that you don't have a whole plant just on one base. That would be a little bit more safe. Then let's talk about all the different beautiful leaves. So why Hoya are so amazing in my opinion is because they can have so many different leaf patterns. And this one is a little bit dusty, sorry about that. I just grabbed them. This is called veins, the darker veins. And there are many different kinds of veins on Hoya. This is a Meredithy, specific one. This is also a Meredithy actually. And then this is also a Meredithy, but there are other like Callistophila and Finlaysoni that get beautiful veins on the leaves. Look at that, just stunning. And these veins are a different color as you can see, but you can also have veins that are, I don't know the official word for it, but they're coming out of the leaf. They don't have a different color. This is my very nice Hoya Clementiorum. Not many Clementiorum that you can buy look like mine actually, but see how it looks like it's completely dehydrated, and people call this a Jurassic Park looking plant or a dinosaur looking plant, and I agree, it looks really cool and weird and kind of dead, which is what we love in Hoya land. It's a little bit weird. But these are veins without any color difference. There is an official word for it, and I'm frustrated I don't know it right now, but it's a difference in, so they come forward a little bit. This is Hoya Gunungading. It has a very specific leaf pattern that any Hoya lover will know and recognize. And these also get really nice sunstress, which is the next step. Mine doesn't currently have any sunstress. It does have some mealybugs though. Ha! I could have shown you. And sunstress is when you give your plant a nice amount of light, which turns the leaves red or pink or purple. Like this Hoya Kaikoyama or something. It was green when I got it, put it under my grow light, and it turned fully red. So we're not talking about the silver yet, we're talking about the red. See how pretty that is? Now you can often also see this on variegated plants. Unfortunately, my Matilda currently doesn't have it. I think something to do with focusing on the flowers. But if you have a variegated plant, I'm looking around to see if I can find another example. The new growth, the white part or the yellow part, can often come in as pink or even more red, depending on the plant. Hoya australis lisa can be really, really dark red. It's so beautiful, but then if you give the plant less light, it will either go away again. As you can see on these leaves, they're all just normal color, or it can stay a little bit on the leaves, but the new growths in winter, if they get less light, will become normal again. Here's another example. This is the outer variegated Bacoensis. It's kind of hard to get on camera, but it's good to know that not all Hoya can sunstress. So some of them will just start to look yellow and sad. Oh, that's really nice. So try it out with your Hoya. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but it's very cool to experiment with. Usually when there's variegated parts, they will become pink or red or purple or amazing looking like this. If we go back to this one, there's another thing you notice on the leaves, which is called splash. This is the silver patches that are on the leaves. And there's many Hoya that are known for having lots of splash or having very cool patterns of splash, like this Hoya AH074, or having a lot of splash like this one, which is really cool looking, or this Hoya Silver Dollar, which normally is fully splashy. There's some markings on here because it's an old one. Now, interestingly, splash, we don't really know what keeps it stable, because if we look at this growth of the Hoya Silver Dollar, I cut this off recently because it reverted. It doesn't have any silver dollar looking bits anymore. Do you see that? There's a little bit of splash on it still, but nothing like how it's supposed to look, which is fully silver. So I'm going to try and grow a new branch out of here that is variegated, or that does have all the silver, but I don't know if it will happen. And this cutting I was gonna throw away, but one of my friends just got into Hoya, so I'm gonna give this to him so he can experiment and try to root it and grow it, because it hasn't done anything wrong, it's just not silvery like I want it to be. And that's a really tricky thing with splash. We don't know what, at least from when I did research, which I haven't done in a few years because my Hoya were not happy for years, so I went off them a little bit. But we don't know. This one, this is called Michele Splash. It is known for having almost fully splashy leaves, this specific plant that I got from James, but mine doesn't do that. It grows a little bit of splash, but not a lot, which is kind of a shame because it is a look that we love and like, but also I love this one in general. I'm not gonna get rid of this one, but it's, if you know how to, if there's new research or something about splash, please leave it in the comments because I have not updated my knowledge in a while. Another one that is famous for having beautiful variegation and splash is this Hoya Argentea Princess. And unfortunately, this one specifically is known to revert. And then you still have the nice splash like on this one, but you don't have the variegation anymore, which makes it extra cool looking, in my opinion. There's still a little bit on this, but not as much. And so there is certain plants that are very easy to grow and they will just stay beautiful forever, like my Hoya pubicalix, something pink splash or something. That's super silver all the time. And then there are others that are really tricky, and those are usually the ones that are a little bit more expensive because they are harder to propagate, so they stay more expensive. One very cool thing about splash is that it can also sunstress. So the splash, the silver, which down here it's regular silver to compare, can become more purple or pink. See, it's a different look. And this one also shows it really nicely, I think. The splash on this doesn't look silver, it looks kind of pink. And the leaf itself has also become darker than the previous leaves because I gave it so much light. So splash can also turn pink. Now talking about variegation a little bit more, with Hoya, you have inner variegation, which is like this, where the inside of the leaf is the variegated part and the outer edges are green. And then you also have the outer variegated, which is in the name. The inside of the leaf is green and the outside of the leaf is yellow or white or pink, like on this one. Now my collection, I'm showing you a lot of examples that are harder to find or more expensive, more special a little bit, but you don't have to spend a ton of money to get a variegated Hoya. Actually, some of the most common ones are the Crimson Princess and the Crimson Queen. The Crimson Princess is the inner variegated Hoya carnosa. The Crimson Queen is the outer variegated carnosa. And they can also get really, really nice pink or red sunstress. And you can get them in basically every garden center. Another easy to find one, maybe not in garden centers, but in general on Hoya websites, is Hoya hirschkeliana. This is the inner variegated one, see? Insides are white. This one is amazing. It's easy to grow. The flowers smell like very sweet buttery as well, like popcorn almost. And it gets really nice sunstress. Again, not this one because it's not getting enough light. You can also get this one in outer variegated, but that's a lot more uncommon than the inner variegated one. Then there's Hoya lacunosa that we can now get in all sorts of variegated versions. There's Hoya bella. This is called Lida Buis, which is the inner variegated one. And then the other one is Anneke Buis, that's the outer variegated one. Actually, funny story, there used to be a Hoya grower about 30 minutes from my house who are called the family Buis. And they grew all the Hoya bella for a lot of countries. And they discovered 2 different variegated plants in their greenhouse and then named them after their 2 daughters, Lida and Anneke Buis. And they were able to grow them out, and that is how we got these 2. And actually, Hoya bella Lida Buis became a little bit famous as Louis Bois at some point, because I think people who don't speak Dutch cannot pronounce Lida Buis, and it became like a bastardized name. So you may have heard of this as Louis Bois or a version of that, but it's actually Lida Buis, and named after a woman who was one of the daughters of the family Buis who grew these plants. pretty cool story, I think. And I learned that from the old 90s newsletters that I read. And there are more and more variegated plants coming out, just like with aroids, I guess. At first you just have the regular plants that we love, and then like the Hoya Matilda was really expensive just last year. It's going down in price a lot. This one as well, the Polynura inner variegated, was very hard to find and expensive, and now you can find it on every rare plant market. Not in every shop, but you can definitely find it with Hoya sellers. And funny enough, they're actually quite easy to grow. So maybe that's why the prices are dropping so fast. Because for me, these two are some of the easiest ones that I've grown. And I was not able to afford these. I got gifted these by friends. So thank you so much, Yukang and Oxana, for these, because I dreamed of them. I love the look of inner variegation personally, and I would not have been able to afford them. Maybe like next year there will be in my budget, but I love my friends and sharing Hoya cuttings with each other. This is a nice example of a Hoya with nice veins, especially on the back of the leaf, that is also soft, pubescent. So Hoya leaves can have hairs that make it feel fuzzy or soft. This is a Hoya villosa that I got from Mout, perfect Hoya. It's really pretty. Or this lovely Hoya Thomsoni. This is the Thomsoni pink, which has a little bit more coarse hairs than the white flowering one. This means the flowers are pink, and the more common one is with white flowers. And the hairs on this are really soft and really cool looking, I think. This is a really fun one to grow. This is also a winter bloomer, by the way. One thing I love that Hoya leaves can have is this shimmeriness. It's not velvet, but it kind of looks like suede or something. It's really hard to capture on camera. This is a Hoya Ruthier I got from Syarda. It's such a cool thing. And there is one Hoya Rinsi Borneo, which was still on my wish list when I was making that video. But now it is in my collection, Hoya Rinsi Borneo. This one also has an amazing shimmer. It's hard to show you, as I said before, but I'm so happy to have this. There's only a few Hoya who have this, and it is one of my favorite things about them. It is really hard to show on camera, but I love it when they have the secret shimmer. How do you decide if you give them a trellis or if you let them hang? And that's kind of hard to explain. So there's a few species that you grow hanging, like Hoya linearis, for example. Also this one, this is Hoya Lai, and this is the prism pink one. But there's just some that have really thin stems, so they are more normal to grow as hanging plants. You can, of course, still give them a support of some kind, like I did here with the Bacoensis. I know quite a lot of people also grow that hanging. It's just a little bit more clumsy because the stems kind of flop over, so it takes a little bit more effort. Then there's a bunch of plants that is up to you. For example, Hoya Matilda, to get this one in the frame again, many people grow this plant as a hanging plant, which is really nice. And I did as well at first when I had my normal one. But because I only had a small cutting, I decided to guide it up this trellis. And I actually really like how it looks with the flower. It's just absolutely perfect. So there are many where you can let them hang, but they will likely grow faster and bigger leaves if you do give them a trellis. But at some point like this, my old Hoya Matilda was huge. So it's also nice to just have it hanging, and that's fine too. That works too. It can mean that they grow bigger leaves. This is my Hoya Karii, which is one of my favorite ones. The leaves kind of look like anthurium leaves, a little bit shimmery. But if you look at this here with my more light, see the size of these leaves and this one. So wait, we're gonna do a comparison. This is my finger next to it. We're gonna put this on this side of the screen. And then one of the old leaves, this is my other finger, do on that side of the leaf. See? And since filming that last month, the new leaves have gotten even bigger. Look at that, they're huge now. They're so cool. Here is a comparison with the last biggest leaf and then my finger again. So support and more light can definitely increase the leaf size. And if you're growing this hanging, then the leaves might be a little bit smaller. But this stem is definitely, as you can see, really floppy, so you can grow this hanging as well. Other plants have naturally really, this is leaking on me, really thick stems. This is Hoya multiflora Wonderful, and even though the leaves are really thin, this doesn't need a trellis. This is just the stem of the Hoya. So there are some that grow more like a bush upwards, or yeah, they don't need the support. They do need a mealybug killed. Wait a second. Okay. I just now do it with my hands. So when I see something, I squish it. And it's gross, but I'm going to wash my hands after filming, so it's okay. This is a really nice splashy one as well, by the way. If you are growing hanging plants, like this one, or Hoya lacunosa is a good one, Hoya bella, I guess, Huskilliana is a nice hanging one, Croniana, then make sure that the top of your pot still gets light. Because if it doesn't get light here, that might become an issue. And also if it does get light here, it can continue growing new leaves all over the place and new tendrils, as you can see mine is doing. This is a really happy little baby with outer variegation, but sometimes a lot more. Like this is a little half, ooh, I'm pouring water out. Little half moon leaf over here. So make sure that light comes from the top, just like with other hanging succulenty plants. There's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the Hoya numbers. For example, on this one, this is a very well-known one. This is Hoya AH07. A lot of Hoya will have a number. This one, for example, this is Hoya meredithii with the addition of GPS 1105. And that might be confusing to people, so I thought I would include it in this video. The numbers and the letters basically mean who discovered it and numbered it. So even before it is named, people go out, really cool people go out into the jungle, discover Hoya, and there's a few different ones. There's, for example, GPS, which is our own Gerard Paul Shirley, who lives in the Netherlands. He's described a few where he's been able to number a few plants. There's IML, which is Iris Marie Little. So cute. This guy called David Little discovered a bunch of Hoya and named them after his wife instead. So IML is him. There's AH, which is a nursery in Thailand who's been numbering lots of plants as well. And there's a whole list that I will put a little bit of on the screen right now. There's a whole website if you want to learn more about this. And then they add the numbers behind it. AH is always with a, at least from what I've seen, 0 and then a number. 74, like this one, or the other one I showed, 049, I think that was. Sometimes they just keep having a number, like this one. Sometimes they get described or it gets discovered that this, for example, this GPS 0015 is actually a meredithii, so the DNA is similar to a meredithii, but it keeps the number to describe this specific form, because this does look different than many other meredithii plants. So if you get a plant with a number, always try and keep it on the label so that you know exactly what it is. If you're an avid Hoya collector, you will have this, of course. But if you're just a beginner Hoya, you can think like, oh, that doesn't matter, and then lose the information, which I have done for sure. And it's really nice to know more details about where your plant came from, who discovered it. Maybe once it gets reclassified, that happens often, then you know more about it. And speaking of identifying, let me put these down. Identifying Hoya is something quite tricky, and really only the experts can do that. And not experts like me with some experience about taking care of them and researching them, but actual experts like Torrell, who had 400 species, and they need a flower of the plant and then a microscope, and then they can identify it. So it's a very specific thing. Often people would message me and say like, what Hoya is this? And I would always be like, one, I cannot say exactly because I'm not one of the experts. I don't have flowers, etc. But of course we can kind of guess, knowing from what is in cultivation. For example, if you see an inner variegated carnosa in the garden center, you know it's likely just a crimson princess or a crimson queen if it's the outer variegated one. The Hoya Karii looks very unique. Hoya Matilda looks very unique. So we can say what we think it is, but it's never official unless you do like DNA research or have the microscope and the flowers. Something interesting, I think, because there are a lot of species, like all the meredithii, that look so different from each other. So yeah, identifying is not something that you're able to do. You can give your best guess, because like verticillata and some other species, there's hundreds of different looking ones. And actually the Hoya collection at the Hortus that I've mentioned several times, most of the plants are labeled Hoya spec, so species, and not knowing which one exactly. They do have the locations of where they were found and all of that, the discovery data, but they don't have the actual names because it's not so easy. And so that's why the numbers, if you do have them on your plants, are kind of important to keep with them, if you can. Several people have asked me a little bit more about my personal preferences and my journey with Hoya. My first Hoya that I ever got was a Hoya Crimson Princess, so the inner variegated one, and it didn't grow for me, it died. So I decided I didn't like Hoya. That was my start with Hoya. I just bought it in the garden center and tried it out when I was still buying things left and right, and it put me off. So when I walked into the botanical garden greenhouses specifically for Hoya, I was saying, I don't like Hoya. I don't need to look here. I don't like Hoya. And then I saw all of these different leaves, the different shapes, the rainbow colors of the leaves with the sunstress and the splash and the cool different shapes and patterns. And I was like, this is Hoya? And then I was obsessed. And within a year, I had 50 different species in my house. And I've had them ever since. And I keep getting new ones. Even though I say I don't need more plants because my house is very full, Hoya are so small when you get them. There's just like one little pot with a little leaf. And then yes, it grows into a big wood. But in the meantime, you can decide if it was actually what you hoped or not. So I got really passionate about Hoya. Like I said, for this one specifically, I really did a deep dive in more of the technical stuff because I wanted to understand them better. Aeroids for me were quite like easy to understand, and with Hoya I was a little bit unsure and there was so much to learn. So that's why I did a deep dive into all these newsletters and all these online content, videos, websites, all the things I could find. I just was like, new information! Someone asked what is my most special Hoya, and that's really hard for me to say because there are a few that I've already showed you that I absolutely love growing. They are so beautiful to me. They were so special. Ooh, wrong one. This side is nicer. They were just water. I never thought I would grow these or have these in my house, so I love them. But then Hoya carii and the way it looks like an anthurium and it grows so easily is also one of my favorites for sure. I love it when they sunstress as well, and this Hoya Ruthier that came back after so many years of struggle with flatmites. But maybe if I have to pick one, I would pick my Hoya clemensiorum because it just looks so cool and weird and dead and veiny. I think if I have to pick, I would pick this one, but not because it's like expensive or hard to find or something. Maybe it's hard to find this specific one because most Hoya clemensiorum look quite different. Another question was, what is still on your wish list for Hoya? And I don't have a long wish list anymore. I've grown quite a few that I had on my wish list and then they were a little bit disappointing, or they didn't grow very well, or they just didn't grow in a way that I enjoyed. So I've gotten rid of quite a few as well again. But one that I've had is Rinsi Borneo, and it grew really well for me. I had a huge plant. It's so beautiful. It has this shimmer that I've showed you. It also sunstresses and it can get splashed. So I had these red, pink, no, more purple red, big kind of round oval leaves with the shimmer and the splash. But then my plant went off the root and all of my cuttings are now dead. They didn't grow anymore. Also because I had a huge issue after we did the home renovation and my Hoya and plants had to move to somewhere else. Lots of them died there and then had the flatmite issue because they were extra susceptible from the cold damage that they got, the stress that they got from moving. So my Hoya have been horrible since 2023, and now finally they are looking really good again, which I am so happy with. It really kind of feels like I'm falling back in love with them because they're doing well again, and it's really, really exciting. People also asked what is my smallest one and my biggest one. I don't know, I have cuttings that haven't grown in ages, so that would be my smallest one, but that's depressing. I've had a micro dwarf species, but that got demolished by aphids, so I don't have that anymore. Biggest one, I have a few really big leaves. Also, this is a pretty big leaf, but these Meredithia leaves are also really, really big. So you could call that my biggest one, but then the plant itself isn't very big. Or one of my fullest plants right now still, the Gunungading, that's just a really full pots. So you could call that my biggest. It switches as well because a lot of the ones I showed you are now small when they were much bigger than this one before. Because if you have to restart them, then they're suddenly small again. So does that make sense? Okay, I think that's the end. If you have any questions left, please let me know in the comments. In all the things that I talked about where you can put your advice in, please do that as well. I'm gonna show you this one last time because it's doing so well right now. Very curious if these other flowers are gonna open as well. It does look like it. The buds keep becoming a little bit more thick. So I hope this was helpful. Maybe a bit long for someone who just wanted to know how to make your Hoya flower. Sorry about that. I wanted to include all the information that I've gathered over the last few years. Oh, also I will include a bunch of channels that you can watch if you love Hoya, you want more content, because there's amazing creators who mainly create about Hoya, like Miro and the old channel of Lesha's Leaves. Adam, Not Dude, has a bunch of information about them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe below if you haven't already, leave a nice comment and click the bell if you want to get notified about new uploads. Thank you so much. If you made it all the way here, leave a nice flowery comment with an emoji of your favorite emoji. There's no Hoya flower emojis yet, but there's a few cute ones that you can pick from. So thank you so much if you stayed all the way till the end, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, friends! I made it. Okay, so I started this 3 days ago, but I got sick, and I'm still sick a little bit. I've been coughing throughout filming, but I really wanted to film this, so I almost lost my nail polish as well, and I just wanted to have it done. So it's now, I think, like 7? Yeah, 7 p.m. I need to make dinner for myself, but it's all on camera, so yeah.